when it comes to understanding Zen, or at least getting a little bit more familiar with it, maybe getting a little taste, or slowly approaching what it may or may not be. I think it's very important if we at first look at why we're even trying to understand, or why we're even interested in something like Zen. Like, what is it inside of us that's longing for something, or that's not really satisfied? Maybe there's a certain kind of restlessness inside of us that we want to eliminate or get free from this restlessness, or maybe some pain, maybe some suffering that's inside of us, maybe some dread or hopelessness. And when we look at Zen, we can also look at religions and philosophies, or existential philosophies, which are all in a way kind of close to what Zen represents, but in some ways they're also very far from what Zen may be all about. But I'm saying this because in religions or in different philosophies, we can find certain answers for our human condition, for why we are suffering, why we are suffering, why we even exist in the first place, if there is a meaning to life, or different kinds of meanings that we can kind of grasp or hold on to. So different religions like Christianity, or philosophies like existentialism, hedonism, absurdism, they all offer you something. And Zen, in a way, it also offers you something. It offers you practice, but in a way, Zen is just pointing back to you. Zen is basically just saying, stop looking for answers outside of yourself. Stop looking for answers in a certain theory, in a certain belief, in maybe certain people or certain things. Just be with yourself, go into yourself, and then you can see for yourself why you're restless, or why you're suffering, who you are, maybe. And in this way, there are teachings in Zen. There are also philosophies, kind of, that talk about Zen, or Zen has its own philosophy in a way, which is more like an anti-philosophy, but then it's still a philosophy. But the point is that I would say an adequate Zen teaching, or appropriate Zen teaching, if there's such a thing. I don't think there is. But like I said, it points to you and it points to practicing. But then the question is, what is this practice? And in Zen practice, there's formal Zen practice and informal Zen practice. Then there's also Koan practice, which is infused into different styles or kinds of Zen practice. And I will get to that in a bit. But in formal Zen practice, to talk about this first, we have the sitting practice and the walking practice. And in the sitting practice, we have kind of like a fixed posture. So we have an erect spine, we're sitting in a lotus position or similar positions that are close to the lotus position. It's not a requirement to be able to sit in a lotus position. I often also sit on a chair or on a bench, and like a cushion is also always very useful. Then we have our eyes open while we're practicing. And basically that's it. In a way, some people say that's already the Buddha, or that's already, I don't want to use the word, but maybe you know what I'm talking about. The thing is, there's nothing more that you then need to do. There's nothing that you're trying to get to while you're sitting. There's nothing that you want to achieve while you're sitting. You're really just sitting. You're not choosing to be aware of any specific thing. You're not choosing to be aware of your breath or of your body or of anything really, even though your awareness can naturally go inside of your body or to your breath or to your thoughts or to your feelings. But we're then just kind of letting that happen. We're not telling ourselves, oh, I'm not allowed to be aware of this, or I need to be aware of this, or whatever. The only thing that's really happening is that we can notice when we're getting lost in thinking, which is then already like an activity that we're doing. We're thinking about something. We're trying to figure something out, which is like a natural tendency of our mind. Maybe a tendency that creates a lot of suffering in the first place, which is maybe the same tendency that wants to understand Zen, that wants to have a religion, that wants to find meaning, that wants to find purpose, that wants to find an answer. But when we're sitting, we're just noticing that that's happening in the same way that the birds are chirping, the same way the trees behind me, they're just standing around. Maybe they're making some sounds in the wind. But we're just getting back to what is or what's already happening. So maybe there's suffering inside of us, and then we're making ourselves more familiar with the suffering. We're not trying to remove the suffering. We're not trying to suppress the suffering. We are not directly trying to find an answer why we're suffering, even though maybe the answer will come naturally to us when you're not running away from our suffering, but when we're intimate or connected to our own suffering. And yeah, the same thing is basically also happening with the walking practice, even though then you're not so fixed in your posture. You're still trying to have an erect spine, or let your spine naturally be erect. Let your eyes be open. And then, I mean, you could also walk quickly, but it's kind of easier if you just walk in a slow pace. Then you can walk in a circle or just somewhere in the woods. I also made a video about this a few months ago, about this particular walking practice. But then again, you're just walking. You're not walking to get somewhere. You're not walking to change anything about yourself. You're just walking, which is usually not what we're doing. Like, we're walking so we can get somewhere, and we're not really aware of ourselves while we're walking. Like, we're walking, but then maybe we're on a phone, or we're talking to someone, or we're thinking about something. We're not really aware how our feet are touching the ground, about the birds, about sensations that are arising and falling away inside of us. So this sitting and this walking practice can be with a timer, like it's intentional, you can do it every day. But then there's also the informal Zen practice, and that can happen, or you can informally practice in theoretically every moment of each day, even though that's maybe a bit difficult at first. Probably gonna take many years of Zen practice to potentially arrive at such a moment where you're always aware. But just when you brush your teeth, when you're cooking, when you're making a YouTube video, when you're just on a walk outside without an intention to practice, you can still listen, you can still be aware, you can still notice everything that's happening while you're engaging in certain activities. But that's much harder, or not that easy, which is why we have formal practice, where we have a dedicated period of time where we're really having this intention, which makes it easier for us to get into it. Then, like I said, next to the formal Zen practice and the informal Zen practice, we also have koan practices, or even just poems that have been written by different Zen teachers, Zen masters, or humans, poets. And maybe one of the most famous ones is "Who am I?" It's not strictly a sentence or a koan that's present in Zen Buddhism. I think it's been present in many philosophies and religions. But when we have a koan like "Who am I?", it is the question for us. It is something that we can think about, or we can dive into, something we can try to discover for ourselves, maybe answer for ourselves. But the thing with Zen koans is that there really isn't a particular answer, at least not in the way we are usually answering certain things. So a koan, a certain kind of riddle, it's more like maybe like a guidepost, or something that's along your path when you're walking somewhere. So it points you in a certain direction. But then it's up to you to go into this direction, or to feel into this direction, or to look to look wherever this koan is pointing you. And of course you can hold a koan just by yourself, but I will also get into the role of Zen teachers in a bit. The thing is, if you're holding a koan just by yourself, not with a Zen teacher, which could then be like a conversation where a teacher asks you or gives you a koan, and then you come back to him with your answer or whatever you come up with, then the teacher can usually check or see how much you've understood, or if the koan is leading you into the right direction, or maybe in no direction. But if you're doing it alone, like, it just can become a very intellectual exercise, and that's not what koans are about. So you could have a koan like, who am I? And then you're telling yourself, I am the universe, or I am love, or whatever you come up with. But if you're then thinking like, oh yeah, I really get it, I've understood everything, then you're still somewhere up here in your head. Then you're still kind of far away from Zen. So maybe you can find someone, maybe you can find a teacher who can help you in a koan practice. But like I said, I will get to this in a bit. And poems are also great vehicles, or great, tools or guideposts as well, because poems are not so restricted like rational thinking or a rational teaching. Poems can kind of touch you in a way that a rational or logical sentence cannot really achieve. So I also have a Zen poem for you, which is also kind of popular one. It's from Basho. And it goes, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. So again, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. So while I'm standing here, I also don't really need to do anything. I can just drench myself into what is happening here, around me, inside of me. And I don't need to actively do anything here or try to control anything here, because I'm here already. Okay, and another poem that I found, kind of a poem, it's like a quote from Dogen Senji. He's also been one of the more popular or ancient Zen teachers, Zen masters. I think it was even him who brought Zen to Japan, but I'm not quite sure. So I found the sentence on the Soto Zen website. So Soto Zen, or Soto, is like a school of Zen Buddhism. And it ends with this quote from Dogen. So they wrote, "Please, honored followers of Zen, long accustomed to groping for the elephant." Now comes the quote, "Do not doubt the true dragon." Yeah. And this last sentence, "Do not doubt the true dragon." I mean, it's also very poetic. Don't think he was literally talking about dragons. Yeah. I'm not gonna explain this or anything, but it's great to read such poems, or maybe kind of even write your own poetry to get a little bit more familiar, get a little bit deeper into, get a greater taste of Zen or Zen practice. Then something that's also extremely valuable and extremely supportive of our own Zen practice is the triple gem or the three jewels, which itself isn't really a concept that's prominent in Zen, but it's prominent in regular Buddhism or in the Buddhist tradition. And this triple gem, which is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, which I would just translate to the teacher, the teachings, and your community. Even though the Dharma can sometimes be understood as more than just the teachings, but I will just leave it at that. These are all kinds of support systems, or they all exist basically to help us or to make it easier for us to practice. And maybe you're already consuming the teachings of Eckhart Tolle or Sadhguru or Alan Watts or Ram Dass or Osho. And it's valuable to read and to dive into those teachings. But what I want to say is that it can be even more valuable or even more beneficial for you if you can find one teacher, maybe who is still alive or she's still alive. Can also be someone who already passed away. But especially if you have someone who's still alive, or if you have a community with people who follow a teaching of teacher who maybe already passed away, then in these cases you kind of get to experience the teachings in a manner that's more alive, that's fresh, that's more direct to you than just reading certain words or watching certain videos. Maybe like this one. Because there are qualities in teachers especially that are not so easily seen or discovered when you don't have conversations with them or when you're not spending time in their presence. For example, with my Zen teacher, of course I can ask him questions about Zen practice or Zen, and then I get certain answers, and they're already great in themselves. But the more I see how my teacher interacts with other practitioners, or just subtle ways of how he talks about things that are not so present in the words themselves, then there are things we can learn or discover or get familiar with who are closer to Zen, who are closer to what the teachings are actually pointing to, if that makes sense. So I think it's very valuable if you can follow one teacher or one teaching, not that then you disregard everything else, but there can just be a certain amount of confusion if you have 10 teachers who maybe all talk about the same thing or the same phenomena, the same ground of your own being, same reality. But when they all use different practices or words or techniques, then they can contradict each other, even though there isn't really any contradiction. And yeah, when it comes to the Sangha or the community, or I would say just friends in general who are also practitioners, I mean, I struggled with that for some time. I'm still struggling a little bit with this, because when it comes to relationships and people, then there are different kind of skills that are needed, or a certain sensitivity that we kind of need to develop or learn through relationships, and not just through sitting alone in the woods or something like that. But if we have a community, if we can find a community, if we can find friends who are also practitioners, then we can kind of amplify each other. We can easily remind each other of our practices, of who we are essentially, of our own confusion. So you could also just practice alone forever without a teacher or without other people who are also practicing. Yeah, but then you're just making it very hard for yourself. So we can kind of use like our human social condition also when it comes to Zen practice. And yeah, that's why I wanted to also talk about these three things, because I think they can really be a safety net for us, a great support system, and great refuge for ourselves. Then I thought it would also be very useful to talk about, in particular, 4 very common misconceptions that people can have about Zen, or that you may also see in yourself when you get into contact with Zen, or if the understanding of Zen is just very logical, very rational, very intellectual, and when it doesn't so much come from your own awareness or intuition or your own heart or something else entirely. So this first misconception, it's about the basically dissociation from your own personality, or the suppression of your own feelings. And essentially just because in Zen or spirituality in general even, or religion, just because there are these notions of God or ultimate reality or enlightenment or any of those things, that doesn't mean that your personality or your mind isn't real to some degree, or that it doesn't also have its own place or its own value. So maybe you're not just your mind, maybe you're not just your own personality, maybe there's even more to you than your mind and your body. But that doesn't mean that we need to remove our mind or kill our own body or kill our ego or something like that. In the same way, I recently heard this analogy and I thought it was pretty good. In the same way that we have clothes or shoes or something, which kind of become a part of ourselves when we use them. The problem is only there when we basically no longer are able to take them off, when they become our whole identity. For example, if you would wear a winter jacket and then you thought, okay, this winter jacket, it's extremely important for me. If I don't wear it, I'm going to die or anything. Or when then there's summer or the seasons change or the temperature changes, then maybe there are moments in your life where you need to take off the jacket. Maybe it's not important or relevant to wear the jacket in every moment of your life. In the same way, maybe it's not important to use your mind all the time or to think about everything all the time. But it's still okay it's still very natural to have your own personality, to have your own feelings, which is also something that can happen, that people think, okay, Zen is about no longer feeling anything or being free of anger, being free of sadness, being free of suffering. Then you're just in a state where those things no longer happen, where you're only in love all the time forever. But yeah, that's also a very twisted kind of understanding. So even though your anger may not be permanent in itself, maybe it can arise and fall away, that doesn't mean that when it arises that we need to suppress it or remove it. So in a sense, again, that would be the opposite of Zen, or also very far away from its essence. Then people sometimes maybe think that Zen is nihilism, that Zen says, okay, nothing has any meaning or something like that. But Zen is more about finding a certain meaning that's maybe unconditional, or that's more alive, that's fresh, that's maybe even there in every moment. But we can still have our own personal meaning, and that's totally fine, that's good, and that's healthy, and that's relevant. It's not about, saying nothing has meaning, work doesn't have any meaning, society doesn't have any meaning. There's still meaning and different levels and degrees and a different spectrum of meaning everywhere. Zen is just about maybe seeing or discovering for yourself that there's a meaning that you may be forgotten about. Let's just say like that. Or, something in that direction. Then this also goes along with this, but Zen is not about just duality, like enlightenment and illusion or something, or personality and enlightenment, or suffering and enlightenment, and you need to get from one to the other or something, or anything like that. it's also not just about non-duality. It's not about thinking for yourself, oh, I'm everything, even though you don't really feel like this when you're alive or when you're going through your day. So there's this koan in Zen, not one, not two. Maybe you can use this for yourself or go into this one for yourself. And there's one more misconception I wanted to talk about. Yeah, Zen is also not about relaxation in the first place, or being peaceful in the first place, or finding happiness. I would say these things, they can all arise, or Zen practice can create a certain environment where these things can flourish, like relaxation and freedom and love and kindness inside of yourself, which may be a valid reason for us to pursue this practice. But then when we practice sitting practice, or when we're engaging in Zen and then we're thinking, oh, I'm still so restless all the time, I'm not relaxed, I am doing it wrong or something, then we're also kind of missing the point. Because again, it's not to gain something, Zen practice. It's not to achieve something. It's not to replace our own reality with something else or put it on top of it or something. It's going into our own suffering. It's going into our restlessness. It's becoming maybe even like a friend to our own restlessness. Paying attention to our own restlessness. And then maybe there can be a transformation into relaxation. Maybe not. But if we're so convinced, or if we're so... if it's so important for us to be relaxed, to find relaxation, then we're kind of missing the whole point of our own Zen practice. Then at last, when you're engaging in your sitting practice, in your walking practice, in informal Zen practice, when you're holding a koan or whatever you're doing, at some point it's beneficial to just take a leap, to forget even Zen itself, to go beyond or even farther than any koan, any notion of Zen, any notion of your own practice, any notions of walking or sitting or anything really. When you're just completely intimate with yourself and everything around you. So it's good for us to have Zen teachings. It's good for us to practice Zen. It's good for us to have values like loving kindness, awareness, freedom. But at some point we can just forget about them, or just totally or completely let go. Let all of them naturally drop away, fade away, dissolve. And maybe then we can discover true Zen beyond any words and beyond any certain kind of notion.